Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. Jazakallah for settling down. I did make an announcement that if you haven't registered, please do make sure that you register. Please don't get up now, but make sure that before you leave, you register. There is a counter at the back, and even if you have registered online, you will still need to register. So please make sure that you do that. That will just ensure that we stay in touch. So that's a good idea. Okay, second part of the program. I got a couple of things from the audience. They said, you still haven't introduced yourself. So, my name is Tanveer Ahmed. I am obviously the host today. I'm also a part of Rehbar. I'm a businessman. I'm in Bangalore. But more importantly, I forgot to introduce Rashid Sharif. You saw the gentleman in the video who introduced that video to us. You also saw him going around. He's an important part of Rehbar. He is the former CEO of Rehbar, the first CEO of Rehbar. Rashid is from IIMT, right? IIMT Ghaziabad, yeah. So, important part left out. Excuse me for that. Okay. Main part of the program starts now. So if you've just walked in, great. You haven't missed the main part. You've missed the introductory part, but nothing can be done about that. Today we are, alhamdulillah, fortunate to have between us Brother Mirza Yawar Baig, all the way from Hyderabad. Brother Baig is an international speaker. He's a life coach and so many other things. I will let Sharif Saab introduce him properly to us. And once he has, we will hear Brother Yawar Baig speak on the topic, responsible wealth creation. Brother Sharif Katapurat, may I call you on stage to introduce Brother Yawar Baig. Brother Yawar Baig, may I also call you on stage to join us over here, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I met Brother Yawar Baig maybe about 13-14 years ago, and we had invited him to Bangalore to speak at an event. There are many people here, or at least some people here, who were part of that event also. And it was held actually just behind here, in the bigger hall of Canopy, just behind. And that particular event, which was basically on leaving a legacy behind, influenced so many of us in Bangalore that we kept calling him back to Bangalore for, under some pretext or the other. And alhamdulillah, he has been very obliging. Whenever he has come to Bangalore, alhamdulillah, he has, given his time for any discussion or any programs that we have wanted him to attend and address. And the biggest influence that he has had, especially amongst the IT professionals, the first program that we invited him was for an IT professionals meet and a get-together. And the biggest influence that he has had is to convince us that, you cannot separate religion out from your rest of your life. It's an integral part. The faith that we carry, our strong beliefs, that influences our values, that influences what we do. And we have to live up to that, and we have to be the standard bearers of what we believe in. And that's one of his life goals also, to drive this mission of creating something like a Standard Bearers Academy, where people who are real standard bearers of our faith can stand up and say, this is what our faith represents, this is what Islam is all about. And that actually, today what happens is there are two different representations of Islam which basically get carried. One by those who apologize for being a Muslim almost, and the other by some of the the scholars in the traditional sense who are not able to connect with the majority of the people. And in between, the real Islam is lost. And one of his strengths is actually conveying that. One of his strengths is being able to convince people about the right way of living and to motivate people towards that. In terms of his professional qualifications, if I start giving that introduction, that go on forever, so I won't spend too much time on that. I think that's put up there. You can take a look at that for a minute or two. He's done his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. He has taught in and taken training classes in almost any multinational that you can think of, including GE, Microsoft, Accenture, and I'm sure there are many whose names are not put up there also because there's a lack of space, or the font has to be made so small that you cannot read it. So, okay, with that, I will hand over the mic to Brother Yawar Baig so that he can continue with the stuff.
Okay, thank you. Inna alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala wa ba'd. My dear brothers and elders and sisters, it's always a great pleasure to be here in Bangalore, and like Sharif Bhai said, Sharif Bhai and I go back many years, and alhamdulillah we have seen many things. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use all of us for things that please Him, Jalla Jalaluhu, and that He should be pleased with us and never to be displeased. This program to which I have been invited, I think my chief qualification of reason to be invited here is because I teach people how to make money. That's my day job, and my moonlight job is talking about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the program in Masjid Mamur is tomorrow in the evening, because that's a moonlight job. So that's why I'm here, and I think it's a very good thing, because there's nothing romantic about poverty. No matter what we like to say, poverty is nasty, and poverty is one of the biggest problems that we have, and I'll show you some statistics to show all of that. So anything that is aimed at removing poverty and at making people wealthy is a good thing. Doesn't have to, I don't really have to say that that wealth has to be wholesome and that wealth has to be earned in ways which are positive. It's like saying remove hunger, feed people. You don't have to say feed people with food that is not poisoned. That would be a stupid thing to say if you had to say it, because why would you feed people with food which is poisoned? So similarly, remove poverty, make people wealthy, but don't make them wealthy in ways which are negative. I don't think that needs to be said. That should be understood. But since generally that is not understood, we will speak about that. And of course, since they have invited me here, I have to say something. I can't just go away. So that's the story. Now, I thought before we go into wealth creation and so on, it would be a good idea to look at the world, at least the way I see it. It's like the world according to GAP, so this is the world according to me. And why must we know that? Because knowledge is protection. Forewarned is forearmed. I think the most important thing is, and everything begins with a mindset change. And the single most important and powerful mindset change to transform the world is to move from the world is responsible for me to I am responsible for the world. And this fits in with the hadith of Rasulullah, where Rasulullah said about this ummah, about the Muslims together as a whole. He said that each of you is responsible for all of them, and all of them are responsible for each of you. So the meaning of the hadith, not the words, but meaning that there is a collective responsibility. It's not okay to live your life as if the rest of the world doesn't matter. That's not okay. We need to live our lives knowing that the world matters. Please note, I'm not saying as if the world matters. It's not as if. It is, the world does matter. Whether you like it or not, the world matters. So therefore, we need to live our lives responsibly because the world matters. Now, let's look at where we are. If we look at the whole debt equity model, looking at business in terms of finance, So I want to do a quick thumbnail sketch of the contrasts between Western, what we like to call the free market. It's definitely not free, but never was, but we like to, these are nice words to use, because what's the opposite of freedom? Slavery. Nobody likes that, so use the word like freedom. So free market and or capitalism, and then Islamic finance or Islamic view of the free market. Islamic market is extremely free. Please understand that. There is a hadith where people came to Rasulullah ﷺ at a time when there was a shortage of things in the market and people were jacking up the prices, and they said to him, why don't you fix prices? And Rasulullah ﷺ said, I will not fix prices, because Allah has not fixed prices. People are free to charge what they want, and you are free to buy it or not to buy it. But at the same time, he says that hoarding of, for example, hoarding of essential commodities and so on, that is no longer an issue of market, it's an issue of social welfare. And if people do not have food to eat, and if you jack up the price, then you are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Islam does not force you to sell something at so many dollars. That's up to you. But the accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains. So therefore, even if you sell something at a high price, which is a price which is for something which is essential, and therefore depriving people of that, then naturally this is not acceptable. So there is the free market is very much part of Islam, except that Islamic free market is a free market which has justice in it. Now, what is the definition of freedom itself? If you look at the definition of freedom on the column of the left, this is the definition that we are taught when I put on my business management hat and I speak, or at least I don't speak that anymore, but this is what we were taught when we were reading Philip Kotler and stuff in Ahmedabad. So, which is that, first of all, freedom is, I'm free to do whatever. What's freedom? I can do what I want. That's freedom. I should be allowed to do what I want. Second thing is that if you do whatever you want and this interferes with what I want, then what I want, then what you want, I call it different names. So I make it illegal, I make it immoral, I make it so on, so on, so on. So my freedom is supreme. If your freedom, you are okay with that freedom as long as that doesn't impinge on me. If your freedom says that my freedom is not okay, then I call it names. Free market, what is a free market? A free market is where I'm free to trade on my terms. Another aspect of freedom, we say, you are free to do whatever I want, but actual meaning of that is, if I do whatever I want and it infringes on what you want, then what I want is progress, freedom, so on, so on. If you want the same things, then I don't call it progress and freedom, I call it, I say that it's illegal and so forth. If I'm fighting for freedom, I'm a freedom fighter. If you are fighting for your freedom, you are an insurgent. It's a play of words, language, right? So in the Western concept, free market is where I'm free to trade on my terms, and for you, a free market is where you are free to trade on my terms. That's like what I'm going to say to you when in the question answer session. I tell people, you can ask me whatever you want, and I will answer whatever I want. Second contrast between the Western world and when I'm saying Western, I'm not necessarily anti-America or anti-England or something, because West today is the name of a way of thinking. West is not a direction anymore. We are probably far more Western than a lot of countries in the West, because if you look at the world, and the world is round, west of what? Right? So west of what? So the West itself is a faulty concept if you look at it. So Western meaning a way of thinking. Now in the Western way of thinking, the man is king. He is the lawmaker. He makes the laws. As in forms of government, he makes the laws himself. In Islam, it's the opposite of that. Man is not king. Man is the Khalifa. Man is the vicegerent. The lawmaker is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas the person is a person whose job is to implement that law. In Islam, the person is subject and subservient to the law which is divine. Including the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never held himself above the law. Although he gave the law, but when it came to the law, he said, I am subject to the same law. There is no difference between me and anyone else. Now, this is unique to Islam because the divine right of kings, for example, if you read British history and history of most of Europe, they had this concept called the divine right of kings. It was a God-given, they said, it's a God-given right of the king to rule. So the king is above the law. The king said, I am the law. Right? I am the law. I am the state. Louis XIV, the king of France, he said that before they chopped his head off. So he said, I am the state. So that's not Islam. Islam, you are not the state. You are not the law. You are subject to the law. Second one is freedom in the Western concept is do whatever you can get away with. So as long as you can get away with it, you can do it. But in Islam, you can only do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted. There's no question of, because obviously you can't get away with something that Allah has prohibited. Third one is Western concept, it's my life. It's my life. In Islam, it's not your life. Your life is a trust to be led according to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not your life, you can't do whatever you want with it. That is the reason why in Islam, suicide is haram. Suicide is haram. It's not permitted to commit suicide because it is not your life. So you can't take your life. No matter what, you're not permitted to end your own life, whatever you might think are the reasons. This is a big, euthanasia is a big debate, for example, in the West, and in some countries it is permitted where people who are suffering from terminal illnesses and so on are legally, they are allowed to take their own life or to commit suicide. Islam does not permit that. You're not allowed to do that. Abortions, for example, without reason, terminating pregnancies, not permitted because that is not your life. You can't just kill a child, not permissible in Islam. Freedom in the West means accountable to nobody. In Islam, we are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you like it, you don't like it, whether you accept it, you don't accept it, the accountability to Allah is for all of creation, all of mankind, and there is no denying of that. And the last one, and that's interesting, in the Western concept, when you die, it's over. And Islam tells us, when you die, it begins. It's not over. When you die, it actually begins, because that's when the accounting starts. Now, and that's the fundamental principle of Islam, that we are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu, from whom nothing is hidden. Now, business orientation in the West and Islam. In the West, business orientation is maximize profit. Islam says growth for the sake of growth is the philosophy of the cancer cell. Maximizing profits, no matter what happens. Islam says maximize contribution, not profit. Profit is a consequence of great contribution. Profit is not the reason you work for. There's nothing wrong with profit. There's nothing good about not making profit. Please understand this very clearly. There's a lot of confusion in the minds of a lot of people. When they think about charity, they think charity means to accept substandard work. They think being kind means to allow substandard work. They think being charitable means to run an organization which is fat, which is inefficient, which is overstaffed, for example, has too many people because you're trying to do good to a lot of people. That's rubbish. That is rubbish. That's totally bad business. It's not Islam at all. Islam means run a lean and mean organization, run an organization which is highly efficient, highly profitable, delivers quality every single time. And then you take that profit and you invest it back in society and you do good for people and you help people and so on and so forth. Now the two are linked, but they are separate. You can't be doing good by running a lousy organization. You can do good by running a great organization and taking the money and then doing some good stuff with that money. So that's the Islamic concept. That's what I mean by saying maximize contribution, not maximize profit. Western concept, cost is what happens to me alone. What happens to others is, or society and so on and so forth. What is it called? Collateral damage. Right? Western concept, manipulation is when someone does it to me, not when I do it to somebody else. In Islam, manipulation is haram. Simple as that. Happiness is however I choose to define it. Others don't count. And we have this phrase commonly, which is used also by Muslims unthinkingly, where you say about somebody, well, you know, as long as they are happy, as long as he is happy, as long as she is happy, it's okay. Now, how can it be okay? Because somebody who is a serial killer is being very happy killing people, is that okay? An alcoholic is very happy getting drunk and creating, destroying his family, is that okay? Somebody who's smoking cigarettes is very happy buying lung cancer, then he's going to be spending a lot of money trying to cure it and it won't get cured and he'll die a miserable death, is that okay? So it's being happy is not an indicator of anything. So in Islam we say no, happiness is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the benefit of everyone, not only Muslims. Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, atheists, you name it. A Muslim has been sent into this world to spread goodness around himself and herself. If you as a Muslim are not doing good to other people, if because of you other people are not benefiting, we need to question our own faith and say, am I really a Muslim? Because how come I am there and other people are not benefiting from me? And as I said, Islam does not distinguish those other people on the basis of faith. Other people is other living, breathing human beings, irrespective of faith. Western concept, others don't matter except where they are useful. Customers matter because we make money out of them. Somebody who's not my customer can go to hell. In Islam, others matter, and they not only do they matter more than I do, because the huququl ibad, the rights of the people, are things which if you transgress, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah will not forgive you until the person that you wronged forgives you first. Whoever that person might be. Whoever that person might be. There's no condition that that person you wronged has to be a Muslim. No. Whoever that person might be. When we come to the issue of trade, I will explain this a little bit more. Again, in the Western concept, what is legal is not necessarily moral or ethical. What is legal, for example, prostitution is legal in many of the in the Netherlands. They give it a different name. They don't call it prostitution. They call it another name, but it is prostitution. It's legal. In Islam, what is legal, what is moral, what is ethical, they all mean the same thing. There's nothing in Islam which is legal but not moral. There's nothing in Islam which is legal but not ethical. But in the West, I can give you any number of, for example, sale of cigarettes is legal. Is it ethical? Sale of alcohol is legal. Is it ethical? Now Donald Trump is talking about, even it's right now, even in many states in the US, marijuana is sold as a recreational drug. This is the game of words. The game of words. You take something which is essentially harmful, but you give it a spin and you call it a nice name, and people start believing that, this thing is okay. So recreational drug marijuana, people call them the green millionaires. They're not people who are more ecologically oriented. It's people who have marijuana farms. They're making money out of drugs. It is legal. Is it ethical? That's the point I'm saying. Huge contradictions, but because we don't reflect, because we don't think, we have no time, or we live in a world where we pretend we have no time. So therefore we are somehow able to live with these contradictions. I'm sorry. In Islam, this contradiction does not exist. What is legal is also moral, is also ethical, is also positive for all concerned. So now, the difference between the old economy and the new economy. In the old economy, the MNCs, the multinational corporations with Western owners, they acquired raw materials and markets through the use of direct or indirect force. Today, exactly the same thing. The means of that force have changed. There was a time when it was just military means. In this case, it is also military means, but it's also the major banks. It's also the World Bank, it's the IMF, the UNO, and of course, local puppets who play a very major role in enabling this to happen. Old economy parent nations supported the business people with armies. East India Company was a multinational British company run out of a warehouse in London. The country manager, designation is familiar, right? The country manager was Robert Clive, who annexed states, who slaughtered people, Allah only knows how many. I don't think anyone has a count of the number of Indians who died thanks to the policies of Robert Clive. He was country manager of a multinational company. India was ruled for a century by one multinational company, not by the British. The British as a nation, as a government, started ruling India only in 1857. For 100 years before that, the country was ruled by what was called the Company Sahib, of which that's the official terminology, the Company Sahib. Bahadur Shah Zafar was exiled and his 3 sons were killed and stripped naked and thrown in the street and not allowed to be buried for 3 days by order of the Company Sahib, not the British government. The British government only came in 1857, but since we don't read history, we don't know any of this. So that was colonialism, this is called democracy, same difference. So what's the solution? In a utopian world, in a perfect world, when capitalists realize that this is a connected world, and that doesn't refer only to Wi-Fi, what is bad for others cannot be good for you. People have to understand this. People who own the capital must understand that we need other people. Will this happen? I certainly hope so, otherwise we won't be around. When they realize, people who have money, when they realize that those who have money are responsible for those who don't have. Religion or no religion, I'm talking here business, I'm not talking religion. You can be an atheist, the same rules will apply. Number 3 is when they realize that we are free to choose, but every choice has a price tag. We are free to choose, but no choice is free. And when they realize that one day we will answer to our Creator, whether you believe it or not is immaterial. I was speaking in April in Oxford at the International Conference on Education, on faith-based education. And I said to the people, I said that the archaeologists of the future will perhaps one day dig up this civilization. And when they realize the kind of knowledge we have, they will wonder how people who knew all this still managed to destroy themselves. It would not be strange if this world was being destroyed by people who had no knowledge, because that would be normal. Bunch of ignorant people, they have no knowledge, so they went and destroyed their world. But we pride ourselves and we say that we are at the peak of knowledge. And Allah knows whether that's true or not, but at least we certainly know a lot. I mean, there's no doubting that. Then how come we are destroying this world? We have somewhere else to go? We are poisoning the oceans, we are poisoning the air, we are poisoning the land, we are poisoning ourselves, and we are doing it at a rate which many climate experts believe that we are already over the top. They really believe that there is no running back. Now, I am not a climate expert, so I don't believe that. I believe that we can come back, but we really need to do some extremely serious thinking. Not all that holiday at state expense that happens in Davos and in Paris. It's very interesting. There were over 30 or 40 country heads, over 30 or 40 national heads of nations who came together in Paris at the climate summit, and they talked about conservation of energy. And they said things like we should carpool and so on. And every one of them came in a personal private aircraft. And that's also interesting, a story when GM went to the US government for US Congress for a bailout, when there was a slump in the car industry, the famous thing that happened with GM was at the back to the one. Not only GM, all the car manufacturers, GM and Ford and Chrysler, and they all went to the US government for a bailout. The congressional committee which was there, the chairman of the congressional committee asked them a very simple question. He said, "How did you come?" He said, "How did you come? How did you come? They all came in private aircraft. So they said, "You want the Congress to bail you out and you are still flying private planes?" It's interesting how the world works, huh? So until then, prepare for the next meltdown. Seriously, we need to ask this question: how is it that we go in this debt equity business? How is it that we have these peaks and troughs in the economy? Why is this? From the 1900s onwards, we have a financial slump, and then there's a peak, and there's a slump, and there's a peak. Why? You mean we are so dumb, we are so stupid that we can't figure out a system? I'm not even talking about the interest rate. I mean, charge interest, charge what you want. Give us a stable financial environment. How come you can't do that? You haven't done that in over a century. Why? Because people will make money. Every time you lose your life savings, it is going into somebody else's bank account. That is the problem with the system. These peaks and troughs are benefiting some people. Take my word for it. They don't feel the pain. They go to the bank while you feel the pain. And that's the reason I'm saying, ask, why would you give billions of dollars, over $1 trillion, to the same people who just sank $1 trillion for you? While you lose your house, the head of the bank is getting a $1 million bonus. Why is that? How is that right? I don't care what the law is. How is that right? Right? You need to ask this question to yourself. Why would you give billions to the people who realistically should be in jail? And then why would you continue to lie to the man on the street whose past was spent in servitude to you, in your servitude as your slave, whose present is destitute, and whose future you stole? So I want you to watch this movie. I wanted to show you a clip here, but I think just showing you a 5-minute clip really doesn't work. You must see the whole movie. It's a documentary. It's not one of these mystery theory kind of stuff. It's a documentary. It's a very important movie. I'm going to give you. I've sent this entire presentation to Rashid already. He is going to send you a link with this entire presentation, so you don't need to copy any of that. You will get all of these. Just click on the link. You must watch this movie. It's called The Four Horsemen. Extremely important documentary to watch to understand how the current financial system works. My brothers and sisters, we live in a world of contrasts. We live in a world that speaks to us in the language of signs, ayat, but readable only by those who can see, not by those who look. You need to understand the sign to know what the sign means. And that's why I say, there's none so blind as those who will not listen. And that's a quote from American Gods, Neil Gaiman. There's none so blind as those who will not listen. Let's talk about basic necessities. We live in a world where 50% of the population earns less than 120 rupees a day, $2.50. Tonight, more than 1 billion children will go to bed hungry, and it doesn't matter whether it's tonight or tomorrow night or so on. That figure is constant. 22,000 children die every day due to poverty. I'm not talking about war zones. I'm not talking about illnesses. Just because of poverty, 22,000 children per day are dying because of poverty. On this planet, 805 million people do not have enough food to eat. More than 750 million, which is close to a billion, they don't have access to clean drinking water. What is a basic necessity? I'm sure there are many of you here who think that the latest iPhone 6 is a basic necessity. There are other people for whom a basic necessity is a piece of bread once in 2 days. Not every day. There's a guy called Max Rosa in Oxford who does a lot of statistical analysis and publishes them, and this is one of his graphs. This is the number of people in absolute poverty country data, and he's defined absolute poverty as somebody who's earning less than 1.25 US dollars per day. Less than maybe 75 rupees per day. Which is the country which has the maximum number in the whole world? Your country and my country, India. Not Africa. You might like to think that it's one of the African countries. It is not. India is the country with the maximum number of people in abject poverty in the whole world. The next country is Nigeria in Africa, and Nigeria is less than half of India. Not a nice place, not a nice way of being ahead. Huh? My submission to you is that this affects us directly and indirectly. Poverty is not just that you and I are struggling to lose weight, whereas other people don't have food to eat. That does not mean we are not affected. We are affected by the poverty that we are surrounded with. From the Planning Commission report of 2008, number of people receiving skill training country-wise, out of 100, India is only 10. And my solution to this is to set up a vocational training in every school. Set up a vocational training thing in every single school. Every student who graduates from the school in class 12 must come out also with a skill that he or she can use. A physical skill. Whatever it might be. Even if they never use it for the rest of their lives, it doesn't matter. Let them come out of there with a physical skill. Today we have an education system. Just think about that. Today our education system, across the world even, except for some schools which I know about, but otherwise, and definitely in this country, today our education system is as follows. If I tell you that I have been studying something full time for 15 years, what will you call me? An expert, right? 15 years full time study, expert, yes or no? What do you call your child who graduates class 12, has been studying full time for 15 years? What do you call him? Expert? You have spent 15 years of your child's life, and you have spent a fortune in school fees to give him what you like to call an education, which makes him completely and totally unfit at the end of 15 years to survive 1 month on his own. If you don't believe me, as soon as your son or daughter graduates, tell them leave home, go away, come back after 1 month, don't go and stay with any relative and so on and so forth. I will guarantee you 99% of them, that's the last you will see that child. The child will probably die or get kidnapped or something will happen to the child, because the child has finished 12 years of schooling, totally 15 years including nursery, has come out of there with no life skills, no way of earning a living, no social skills, no way of surviving society, and you spent a fortune giving them what you like to call education. That's absolute nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. So, do something about it. What will it take? Problem and solution. I don't like to simply define problems. Here's the solution. 1998, the United Nations made an estimation. And the estimate was, what will it cost annually to offer basic education, clean water and sanitation, reproductive health, basic health care and nutrition. Now think about that. This is absolutely the fundamental. Clean water, clean food, basic medical care and basic education. To every person in every developing country, which means there will be no person on the face of the earth who does not have enough food to eat, who doesn't have proper medical care, does not have proper clean water to drink, and does not have a basic education. Isn't that a nice word to have? All that it will take is $40 billion US in 1998. 2015, this slide is good to 2015 because we are just now in 2016. 2015, that went from 48 billion to 40 billion to 58 billion, an increase of 18 billion over that period from 1998 to 2015. That's all it will take. Whereas we are spending 1.4 trillion on weapons. Then you wonder why there is sickness and you wonder why there is hunger. Is it surprising? You get what you pay for. You're paying for death, so you're getting death. You pay for life, you will get life. And surprisingly, life is cheaper than death. My brothers and sisters, believe it or not, hunger kills. Hunger kills. Hunger is the number one cause of death in the world, killing more people than HIV, AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis combined. As I told you, I'm giving you numbers. Numbers don't lie. Look at Muslims. Students entering primary school level. Muslim students entering primary school. This data is from the Justice Ranganath Mishra Commission on Religious and Linguistic Minorities in India in 2004. 65% of Muslims enter primary school education. How many graduate? 3%. Reason? Poverty. Nothing else. Nothing else. 3%. With a population demographic representation of 12%, we are not even at that representation. 3%. Over 30,000 farmers committed suicide between 2011 and 2013. Yeah, the government has a nice way of saying it. Farmer suicides reported by states as being for agrarian reasons. They're not agrarian reasons, they're financial reasons. Debt traps, not because the seed didn't germinate. Happiness doesn't cause suicide, despair does. Complete loss of hope. The Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF's, what they call the Living Planet Report, I call it the Dying Planet Report, 2014 says that the number of wild animals in the world has halved in the last 40 years. That's only the ones we counted because we don't know how many died we didn't know about. Now we come to some other nice numbers. 62 people, I'm not talking percentages, 62 individuals in this world have more money, have more assets than the other 3.5 billion people combined. 62 people have more money and more wealth than the 50% of the global population. And that's Forbes and Oxfam's report, as reported in BBC. And the comment at the end of that article, the last line, I think must be a joke, because somebody with a twisted sense of humor. Because the report says, we call upon governments to change this. So I said, ha ha ha. The government is comprised of those 62 people. So I'm sure that sentence must be a joke, huh? Can't be serious. That's a cartoon that is seriously not funny. It says, interesting, the gap between the rich and the poor is not as great as we thought. And we come to finally to the big one, which is equality of women. I am taking just one factor, which I consider to be the most important factor, because it doesn't matter whether you have a piece of cloth on your head or not. That doesn't indicate anything. What indicates is, what are you worth? What are you paid? These figures are good till 2015. Women get 80% of what men get for the same job. Women get in America and in the West, in Europe, women get 80% of the salary for the same job as a man does. So your being a man gets you 1/5, 20% more for nothing, just because you are a man. And that's why there's actually an organization which says, I am not worth less. Stop discounting women. You want women's equality? Starts with how much you pay them. So pay them equal for equal. And that's what Islam tells you to do. So what does all this mean for you as an investor? What it means is, number one, that wealth is not a matter of life and death. Wealth is a matter much more important than life and death, because it determines what happens after death. I want to use this quote of Paulo Coelho. He says, if you want to be successful in life, you must respect one rule: never lie to yourself. I think that's very important for us. Own up to the fact that we are responsible. Believe me, seriously, each one of us is responsible. Each one of you in this room represents that top 1% of population in the world. And believe me, that's nothing to feel nice about. That's a huge, huge, huge responsibility that Allah has placed on our heads. Why is wealth important? Because that is one of the questions that we will be asked on the Day of Judgment. The hadith in Tirmidhi, where Rasulullah is reported to have said, the feet of the son of Adam will not move from before their Rabb on the Day of Judgment until he is asked about 5 matters. Number 1, about his life and how he spent it. Number 2, about his youth and how he took care of it. What did he do in his youth? Number 3, about his wealth. Where did he earn it? Where did he spend it? And number 4, about knowledge that was given to him. Did he act on it or did he not act on it? There is a series of lectures of mine called Questions, but How Will We Answer? And there is also a book by that name, Questions, but How We Will Answer. All of that stuff is free. All my stuff is free. Go read it. Narrator Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that which is lawful is plain, that which is unlawful is plain. Al-halalu bayyin wa haramu bayyin wa baynahuma mushtabihat. And between the two of these things are doubtful matters that not many people know. He said, the one who avoids doubtful matters clears himself in regard to his religion and his honor. But he who falls into doubtful matters falls into that which is unlawful, like a shepherd grazing his flock around the sanctuary of the king. The chances are that some of the sheep or goats will stray into the pasture of the king and the shepherd will be in trouble. So if the shepherd does not want to be in trouble, what must he do? Stay away from the boundary of the king. That's where safety lies. And therefore, Rasulullah said that truly every king has a sanctuary, and truly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sanctuary is his prohibitions. And then he said, in the body is a piece of flesh which if diseased, all of the body is diseased, and that is the heart. And that's in Bukhari and Muslim. Therefore, what is taqwa? Taqwa is not avoiding haram. Taqwa is avoiding the doubtful. Avoiding haram is, one doesn't have to say it. That's why it's called haram. You have to avoid it. But taqwa is avoiding the doubtful. And that is where the promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not for the Muslimun, they are for the muttaqun. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, not هُدًى لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who have taqwa and those who do ihsan. Who have taqwa and those who do more than what they should do legally. Somebody who is fulfilling all the legal rights and then doing something more. That's ihsan. Allah is with those who have taqwa and those who have ihsan. And that's why the thing that Sharif Bhai said, bringing Allah into the equation, I say factor Allah into the equation because He is in it anyway. So you may as well think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a matter of you bringing Him. Allah is there anyway. So factor Allah into the equation because He is in it anyway. My brothers and sisters, the biggest cancer that we have in society is riba, which is interest. Many years ago, I think it was 94 or so, 94 or 95, I was teaching a course for Infosys. And Naramurthy came to this course. And while we were having coffee, I asked him, I said, Infosys is a zero debt organization. So I said, why is that? So he told me, I'm surprised you are asking me that question. I said, no, I don't be surprised because I know why you are saying that, but you are not a Muslim. So that's why I'm asking you, why? He said, for the same reason why you don't do it. So I said, what's that reason? He said to me, and Allah is witness, Murthy tells me, interest destroys wealth. Narayana Murthy. He said, interest destroys wealth. This is what Narayana Murthy told me. He said, interest destroys wealth. He said, we are a zero-based interest organization because interest destroys wealth. And Because I asked him, he said, I'm surprised you are asking me the question. So I said, I'm not asking you because I don't know. I want to know why you are doing it. Meaning he's saying, how can you as a Muslim ask a question about interest? You know what I'm saying? Now what is this issue of interest? As we know the ayat, and I will not recite them for you. I just want to draw your attention to one point in this ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Now if you see this ayat, the meaning of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, He gave the issue of interest. He said, those who eat riba. Now see the example. Allah is saying the one who is eating riba, meaning who is dealing in interest, will stand on the day of judgment like a person who is insane, who's been beaten by shaitan. His brain is not working. He's insane. And that's because Allah is saying, they say that trading is like riba. For example, one of the common things people say is that if I have a house which is worth 1 crore, and I get a rental value from that house which is 10% of that, so I'm getting 10 lakhs per year. How is that different from lending 1 crore at 10% interest? I mean, I'm still getting the same 10 lakhs. It's not as if, by this I'm getting even 1 paisa more. And I'm saying that this is the shan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu. That is the reason why it's important, first of all, to ask yourself, who is Allah? Because until the glory and magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't come into your heart, you will not understand the power of ahallallahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. Think about this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give a reason. Allah said, they say, al-bay' mislu riba. He said, business is like interest. Allah then does not give you reasons. Allah does not say, no, you see, business is not like interest because interest does this one and business does that one and this is negative, that is positive. Allah is not saying any of that. Allah is saying Allah has made one halal and He has made one haram. Ahallallahu al-baya. Allah has made business halal. Wa harrama riba. Allah has made riba haram, and that is the reason why it is haram. The fact that there are actual economic reasons why interest destroys wealth is fine, but even if none of that was there, it is still haram. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. That is the glory and magnificence and majesty of the address of the Quran, which we will not understand until we get the glory and magnificence of understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into our hearts. See the ayat which my brother Gibran recited so nicely at the beginning of this, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about His glory and magnificence, and He mentions that as an example, and He says that if this kalam, Allah does not say if I came down on the mountain. No, He says if my word was sent onto a mountain. What does it mean? Put the book on a rock? Send my word onto the mountain means that if the mountain understood what is the meaning and the glory and majesty of this word, the entire mountain would humble itself and would crumble and would become dust. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this before He introduced Himself. And when He introduced Himself, and I am glad when He gave the translation, He said that the translation can never do justice to the... It's impossible. How will a translation do justice? The words of the Quran alone, the glory of it is unimaginable. That glory has to come inside us. That feeling has to come inside the heart. The Fajr reminders that I am doing currently are based on this. What happens to your heart when you listen to the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu? Allah said, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. In Surah Al-Anfal, Allah said, only those are believers who, when the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes before them, their hearts shiver with the glory and majesty and magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the ayat, when I do not like the word verse because the Quran has no verses. The Quran has ayat. Use the actual terminology of the Quran. Then somebody who does not understand will say, what is the meaning of ayah? That opens the door of dawah for you. If you say verse, he understands verse, like Shakespeare's verses or somebody else's verses. He doesn't ask you the question. So it never opens the door for you to speak. So don't say Lord, say Rabb. He said, what is Rabb? Opens the door for you. Don't say verses. The Quran is not a book of poetry. How can it have verses? The Quran is the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the signs of Allah. Each ayah opens your eyes to who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah said, when they are recited before the mu'min, his iman increases. And what is the result of these two things? The result of a responsive heart and the result of iman increasing? وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. And therefore he has faith in his Rabb. The reason why we fall into interest is because of lack of tawakkul, because of lack of faith. You think that unless I take interest-based loans, my business will not survive. But the one who has tawakkul says, this is min Allahi ta'ala, my Rabb will give me. I make the effort, but I rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and my Rabb is not a faqir, my Rabb is not a beggar, my Rabb is not muhtaj, my Rabb is not needing for anything. He doesn't need me to fall into crime, he does not need me to fall into something haram in order to feed me. But that must happen, what must happen inside your heart? So ask yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and I will recite what he recited, لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبَلٍ لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِّنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Who is Allah? هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. And he is the one who said, أحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. So how can interest be halal? How can interest be halal? I don't need any dalil. I do not need any dalil. And inshallah, it is my belief that you do not need any dalil. This is enough. Yes or no? Ahallallahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ كَفَّارٍ أَثِيمٍ. Allah said, Allah will destroy interest. Seriously. Read the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the reason it came, which is to change our lives and to make our lives beautiful. You got a problem with that, man? You got a problem with making your life beautiful? You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bothered? You think it harms him or something? No. Allahu Samad. Nothing harms Allah, nothing benefits Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from all wants. For our benefit. For our benefit. Yamhaqullahu riba. Allah said, I will destroy riba. You want to fight that? You want to tell me that you want to take bank loans and you want to pay interest and you want to lend money on interest, and this will benefit you, when your Rabb and my Rabb said that he will destroy it. It is his promise, wallahi. You want to fight that? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, those who believe, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. لَا خَوْفٌ وَلَا حُزْنٌ. This is the quality of the people of Jannah. This is the quality of people in Jannah. There is no fear, there is no sadness. There is no regret for what has happened, there is no fear for what is going to happen. Allah said, this is what will happen to you in this life, provided you live this life according to His rules. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. O you believe, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَى إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. It is an ayah which is conditional. It's an ayah which is a criterion. Do you want to if I say, am I a mu'min or not, what must I do? Look at this ayah. Because if I'm not pronouncing a fatwa of kufr on somebody who's dealing with interest. Please understand that. I'm just saying that here is the ayah which is saying very clearly, Allah is saying, if you are a mu'min, give up this thing. So it's for each one of us to decide, am I a mu'min or am I not a mu'min? Because this is what your Rabb said. I'm not saying it. I'm giving you the words of the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You got a problem with that, go ask him. In kuntum mu'minin. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu lays down the law. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. You know, you want to fight, pick someone your size, man. Seriously. You want to fight, go pick someone your size. You want to fight with God, you want to fight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. What kind of nonsense is that? What kind of insanity? That's why Allah said, the one who stands on the day of judgment in that state is insane. Where did this ayat begin? Allah said, the one who stands with riba is like the one who is beaten by shaitan. His brains have gone. Why? Because he is picking a fight with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you win that? How can you win a fight with your own creator? And that's why Allah said they're insane. Because there's no explanation. If you have any brain at all, why would you do that? There is a declaration of war from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. My brothers and sisters, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment to cover you with His mercy and to cover you with His forgiveness and to make Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the one to make shafaat for you, inshallah, and to accept his shafaat in your favor. Don't fight with them, man. You want to accept a declaration of war from the one whose intercession you need? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Seriously, ask yourself. Ask yourself. Now, brothers and sisters, I gave a khutbah recently in Hyderabad which created a lot of confusion, because I began my khutbah, suddenly I got this great inspiration. So I began my khutbah with saying, I want to say to you that I just discovered this morning, I realized that I have a terminal disease, that I have a terminal illness that has no cure. So all the people in the masjid, they all love me very much. So everyone got, oh my God, what happened? He's going to drop now or something. So I said, I realized that I have a terminal illness, and the name of that illness is life. What's a terminal illness? A terminal illness, something which has no cure, right? Which ends in death. Yes or no? That's called life. Am I the only one with that terminal illness? Seriously. All of that stuff which you are building, which you are taking interest-based loans and you are building this one and that one and a house and a business and so on and so forth will get left behind right here. And when you and I go into that hole in the ground, we are alone. Don't do something which destroys that for this. And then this is the beauty of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if you loan money to somebody and the person is having a hard time, don't harass the person. Don't harass the person. Leave him. It's really tragic how much we have fallen. Seriously, we have to look at ourselves, my brothers and sisters. The word time has come. People are not interested in listening about Islam because we behave in ways where they don't even want to listen. Who wants to listen about Islam from somebody? You look at me and say, you are telling me about Islam? If what you are is Islam, I don't want it anyway. Seriously, ask ourselves. We have to look at ourselves. There is a lot to be done. We have to open our eyes and we have to do it. Sorry to give you all this bad news. You can have some nice food after that. Now, issue of mixing things. So, mixture is haram. Some halal, some haram, haram. I know there are people who have given fatwas to say that 15% of haram income is halal. I don't know how they come to that percentage. And my answer is rather crude. So please, those of you who are sensitive, please shut your ears. But if you want to listen, my answer is if I have this bottle of water, which is that full bottle of water, right? And I put 15% of that, if I urinate in it, and I give it to you, will you drink it? Okay, forget 15%. 15% it'll stink and it'll look yellow. But supposing I put 2 drops of urine. Supposing you don't even see me, I just tell you, the bottle is here and I say, well, this thing has got 2 drops of urine. The only way that you are going to be able to find that urine is if you send this bottle for chemical analysis. Otherwise, there's no way. It doesn't even taste of urine, doesn't even smell of urine, doesn't look like urine. I'm just telling you, there's 2 drops of urine in this bottle. Please drink the water. Will you drink it? Then how do you make 15% of haram in your halal income? How do you make it halal? So whoever gives this fatwa, you must ask them. Haram is haram. Halal is halal. They mix the two, the whole thing becomes haram. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Your Rabb is not a faqir. Allah does not need your help to support you and to feed you. Inna Allaha huwa razzaqu dhul quwwatil mateen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, He is the Ar-Razzaq and He feeds with His power. قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, say to them, my Rabb is the one who gives provision and who straightens it, who constricts it, and most people do not know. My brothers and sisters, don't fool yourself. Allah does not need your help. Just stay on the straight path and Allah will give you a lot of barakah in this life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah will give you Jannah when we go to Him inshallah. So, second thing I want you to see is this series of lectures of mine called Understand Risk. Risk obtained or ordained. The whole series of lectures, please listen to all of them. There is also a book on this called Risk Ordained or Obtained. Please read the book. All the dalail from the Quran and Sunnah are in this, which talk about halal and haram. Now, issue of halal and haram is not only eating, but not only earning, but also eating. There's a famous saying, we say, you become what you eat, or you are what you eat. So please eat halal, and please understand it is your responsibility to check whether something is halal or not. I'll give you one example. How many of you have seen a chicken processing factory? You have seen? Anybody else you have seen? I'll tell you what I saw. Right? It's an assembly line, it's a conveyor belt based plant. Chicken comes in, live chickens come in on one end. The chickens there are funnels. So the chicken is put upside down into the funnel, the head hangs out. And the funnel holds the chicken so it can't flap around and so on. So head hangs out. Then this thing passes through a bath of water. It passes through a bath of water in which there are electric wires. So this chicken is, they say the current will not kill the chicken, it only stuns it. Now, since they do not do a cardiac profile after the bath of water, we do not know whether the chicken is stunned or some chicken dies or what happens. Allah knows best. And after that, once the chicken comes out of the bath of water, there are three things which happen. One of three. One is you have individual people standing there, men standing there, and they have blades, and they try to say Bismillah Allah Akbar, but the thing passes so fast that I don't know what he says, but anyway, he slices. Second one is that there is a mechanical knife, and that what I saw was a mechanical, was a knife which goes chuck, 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 chuck as the chickens pass. And it's a knife, chicken is chicken, the neck is neck, some come off, some don't come off. So this happens. And at that time, while this is happening, there is a tape which is playing saying Bismillah Allah Akbar, Bismillah Allah Akbar, Bismillah Allah Akbar. Right? Third method is, which is even more creative, which is that this knife has got Bismillah Allah Akbar written on it. पहले के लोग हंसते थे, गांव वाले कहने जाके मौलवी साहब जो है चाकू के ऊपर बिस्मिल्लाह पढ़ के फूक के तुम्हें हलाल कर लो जी, हलाल हो जाता बोले तो मौलाना चोर है वैसा बोलते थे, पूरा धंधा कर रहे वही चोरी के ऊपर. So it's written down. One of three things, right? So this happens. Then it goes into a pot of boiling water, the whole feathers and skin and everything comes off and so on and so on. Leave all that. But this process alone, let us assume the best of the best. Fact still remains that the chicken that finally comes to your table, you do not know whether it died in that bath of water. There is no guarantee. You do not know whether that chicken was one of those whose head came off. And definitely, if you consider a tape saying Bismillah Allah Akbar as enough as for halal for you, good for you, I don't. So stop eating doubtful chickens. Halal certification. We need a halal certification organization in this country, and maybe Rehbar people can take the initiative on this. We definitely need that. Proper halal certification organization. I saw a packet of Godrej chicken, which has a halal certification. I checked, it was a masjid in Bandra. So you go there and ask them, on what basis do you certify this? Did you go to the Godrej factory? Do you see what is happening in there and so on and so forth? Nothing. Somebody asked them, they gave it. My point I'm saying is, whether something is halal or not, to determine that is your job. Don't go by the stamp. Stamp is useful, but unless you are absolutely certain what is the process of certification, who does it, what they do, and so on and so forth, it is your responsibility because it is going inside your belly. Final point. All secret formula are haram. Which are the two secret formulas you drink every day? Probably you're going to drink it here also. What are they called? Pepsi and Coke. Secret formula. How can you drink something? How can you drink something which has a secret formula? Tell me. Let me ask you this question. Supposing I say allergy instead of haram, now what will happen? You won't take it. So which is more important? Dunya wal akhirah? Akhirah. If akhirah is important, you will not eat if it is haram. If somebody says allergy, that there might be something that you are allergic to, you will not even go near it. But somebody says, brother, I am not sure, it is doubtful. Allah mein maaf karte. Which comes to the next set of lectures that I want you to see, which is called fatwa or taqwa. Earn and eat halal. So I am giving you three sets of things to do. One is 4 horsemen, the next one is risk, and the third one is fatwa or taqwa. All the links are there. All of that stuff is free. All you need to do is go on the net, sit and watch it. And then change your lives. Now, what does all this mean? Number one, it means that financial literacy is literacy. How many of you in this room, you are talking about investment and so on, how many of you can read a balance sheet? I'm sorry, not enough. Like 4 people, 5 people, 6 people. I'm not asking how many of you can write a balance sheet. How many of you can read a balance sheet? This is a matter of literacy. It is like being literate, reading and writing. Financial literacy is literacy. You know how long it takes to learn how to read a balance sheet? 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Please invest that 15 minutes. I will request Sharif Bhai to maybe even run a class under Rehbar for financial literacy. If you are telling me to stop talking, don't do it. Don't even try it. Don't even hint. Financial literacy is neither difficult nor complicated. Number 2 is use your brain. Allah gave it to you for some reason. Use logic, right? There's no magic. Distinguish greed from desire. There's only one shortcut, and that shortcut is the one that leads to the conman's bank account, not yours. And that's why I say, if it looks too good to be true, it is. People will promise you, you give me your money, I'll give you 60% profit. From where? How can anybody give you 60% profit? I know business. You ask me. You know the way I can give you? I can give you even 100% profit. You know how? I take money from you. I give it to you. I take from you. I give it to you. And then I take from you and I give it to you. And so on and so on. Finally, I put it in my pocket and I vanish. I'm gone. That's called a Ponzi scheme. Right? Now, what happens is, when you give the money, you say, what does it matter? I get my money back. I got my 100% thing. If some fellow, if he is going down the drain, let him go. This is not Islam. This is not Islam. You must be concerned about everybody. Because now what is happening is, because you are putting money into these kinds of schemes, lots of people in society, they are losing their life savings. So even if you didn't lose it, it means nothing. But you are responsible indirectly for what happened there. So please use your intelligence. Okay, what must you do? Very important. To get out of interest, to do all of this, take your family on board. You can't do that if your family is not with you. So, alhamdulillah, your family is also Muslim. And I'm telling you, this stuff just makes straight, clean, clear financial sense. Muslim or not Muslim. Even if you're not Muslim, it's still a bad system, so don't do it. Make an annual budget, break it down monthly, and plan your expenses. Instill financial discipline, and that begins by noting down all expenses. Look for investment opportunities, but play safe. As I told you, don't believe all kinds of claims by people. Take the long view, don't collect junk, and shun brand slavery. Seriously, you are not your shirt. You are not your shoes. What kind of nonsense is that? Right? So either do what I do, which is, I am my own brand. Seriously, we get these questions. Azhar gets the questions. I am sitting there, I'm talking about the greatness and glory of magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm talking about the akhirah, I'm talking about Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and somebody sends the question, where does Shaykh get his clothes from? I said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. That is our dunya. So invest in the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about investing in the akhirah. My brothers and sisters, one of the greatest cons in the world is discounts. And I say to you that if you would not buy that thing at its full price, you don't need it. So don't buy it at a discount. So what to do? Number one, make sure the business is halal. The whole business is sometimes, for example, one of the things that we have in America is very, very common. People run these 7-Eleven shops, the convenience stores. Now, in the convenience stores, they are selling alcohol, they're selling pork, they're selling sausages, they're selling stuff, they're selling pornographic magazines, they're selling cigarettes, all of the stuff. Now, you go to him and say, brother, this is haram, you are selling all of this stuff. He said, no, but my gasoline business is, yeah, of course, that's halal, but this stuff which goes with the gasoline business is haram, you can't sell that. One guy tells me, no, I am selling it only to non-Muslims. Inna lillahi wa inna. Allah sent you to sell drugs to non-Muslims? Where is this halal? In Islam, if it is haram, you are not allowed to deal in it. You are not allowed to sell it or buy it or carry it or store it or have shares in it. Muslim or not, doesn't matter. You are not permitted to spread corruption in society. Now people are doing that. So please understand, business must be halal. Every aspect of it should be halal. Paying less wages, less than minimum wages, paying that to the workers makes the business haram. Please understand this very clearly. You can't suck people's blood in order to make profit for yourself. Ill-treating people, misusing things, all of this, right? Then, as I told you, don't make an enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then make money work for you instead of working for money. Instill this in children from day one. Give them pocket money and then tell them where did you invest this pocket money. And make sure that he also spends some money on charity. Show them the investment with charity, which is investment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Instill this within the children themselves. There's a wonderful book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read that book. Right? Understand risk taking and mitigation. There's a difference between risk and gambling. You know why gambling is haram? Gambling is also risk. It's haram because there's no mitigation of that risk. Taking all your money and putting on Vijay Mallya's horse is not risk taking. That's gambling. And gambling is haram. Don't use gambling and use your intelligence. Please understand, higher the return, higher the risk. And that rule doesn't change for you. So if somebody is promising you a huge high return, please understand, high risk. If somebody tells you, I'll give you 80%, 100% profit, no risk. You ask him, what do you smoke? Marijuana or, what are you smoking? You're telling me something which is insane. You're telling me that I can jump from the 20th floor and nothing will happen to me. That's nonsense. That is straight con. Please do not fall into those traps. Look for leverage opportunities in investment. For example, look for ways to invest where you get more, you are doing other things. For example, you are getting a return, but also you are helping the society or doing things, investing in something like what Rehbar is doing, for example, which is venture capital financing. This is a wonderful way of investing. You're helping somebody else as well. There's a whole methodology called scenario planning. At some point, if I'm around, I'm happy to teach that to you. So do that. Do scenario planning to see that. And don't be a sucker. One is born every minute. Successful conmen are highly credible. That's how they're successful. Right? All right. Last two slides. Being rich is to have options, not possessions. Possessions tie you down. Possessions don't add value. They add cost. At the end, my brothers and sisters, there are two kinds of people in the world. The ones who look for ways to succeed and the ones who tell you why they couldn't succeed. Your choice. And that is the website. Most welcome to go there. Jazakumullahu khairan for sparing the time and spending the time with me here. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me and for being here. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with you, to accept your coming here, to make this a source of khair and barakah for all of you, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.